Welcome back to Doomed Departures. This is the story of a woman who walked into the Kelso Dunes carrying 40 years of finish lines on her back, certain that the body which had once run marathons could outlast a desert that has killed people half her age with twice her caution. What happened to her did not happen because she was weak. It happened because of the single thing she was proudest of. The thing she trusted more than any sign or ranger or number on a thermometer. And what has stayed with me, the detail I keep circling back to, is that she still believed she was winning at the exact minute the desert had decided she would not be walking down. Before I go any further, a word on what this is. This is a dramatization, a composite built from a pattern rangers across the Mojave watch repeat every single summer, set on real ground with an invented woman standing in for the very real people who keep making this exact choice. The dunes are real. The heat is real. The mistake is real. Only she is not. She was 63, and for most of those years, she had been the fittest person in almost every room. She had run distance for 4 decades, marathons mostly, a couple of the long ones in her 50s just to prove the calendar wrong. She had the lean, wiry frame of someone who had spent a lifetime burning off everything soft, a build strangers read as discipline, and she read as something closer to superiority. Running had given her a great deal. It had also given her the one belief that would prove fatal here, that her body was a machine she had personally mastered, that discomfort was simply weakness leaving, that the way through every hard thing was to put your head down and keep moving. On a racecourse, that belief is called grit. In the Mojave, it is a cause of death. Here is the thing nobody had ever managed to tell her in a way she would accept. The fitness she was so proud of was real, but it was the wrong kind for what she was about to attempt. A trained heart and a trained pair of lungs are a marvel at moving oxygen on a cool autumn morning. They do almost nothing for you when the air around you is hotter than your own blood. Heat tolerance is not endurance. It is a separate adaptation, one the body builds slowly over a week or two of daily exposure and loses just as quickly when you stop. She had never built it. She had banked 4 decades of the wrong currency and walked up to the register expecting it to spend. Hold on to that, because it matters more than it sounds. The morning she drove out to the dunes, the Mojave was already under a heat advisory. She had seen the number before she left, 112 and climbing. To most people, that number is a closed door. To her, it was a personal best, waiting to be set. What she did not understand or chose not to was that a road race with aid stations every couple of miles and a medical tent at the line has almost nothing in common with walking alone into an open furnace where the nearest help is a long drive away on a road most people never see. The Kelso Dunes sit at the end of a few miles of washboard dirt road, a flat gravel lot with a small kiosk and a view of the sand, rising gold and enormous to the south. The whole field stands more than 600 feet at its high crest, soft and shadeless. A climb that looks gentle from the lot and turns vicious the moment you start up it. When she pulled in, there was a ranger there, a man named Wes, who had worked this preserve for the better part of 30 years and knew the place the way you learn a person you both love and fear. Wes had carried people off those dunes. Some had walked out leaning on his shoulder. Some had not walked at all. He had learned to read trouble in a hiker before they could read it in themselves, and he had learned something that surprised most people. The most dangerous hikers were almost never the unprepared ones. The unprepared ones were frightened, and frightened people turn around. The dangerous ones were the confident ones. The ones who had survived 100 smaller challenges and quietly decided that caution was attacks on people weaker than them. He saw her gear before he ever saw her face. The visor, the faded race shirt with a city and a year across the chest, the compression sleeves, the single small bottle clipped to a running belt. He knew exactly what it meant. She had come dressed for a race and not for a desert. He walked over, unhurried and friendly, and told her plainly what the dunes were doing that day. He told her the sand itself was far hotter than the air, hot enough to cook the soles of your feet through your shoes, that the climb was 3 miles round trip of soft footing with no shade and no water on any inch of it, and that people who looked far stronger than either of them had gotten into terrible trouble on that slope at temperatures lower than today. He did not lecture because 30 years had taught him that lecturing only hardens a person like this. And then he gave her the one rule that has saved more desert hikers than any other, the rule: the desert punishes you for breaking with a mathematics that will not negotiate. Turn around when you have used half your water, not when you feel tired, not when you decide you have had enough. When the bottle is half gone, you are already finished, because the walk back costs everything. The walk in did, and then a great deal more. She thanked him. People like her almost always thank you first. And then she explained, very politely, that she appreciated the concern, but that she had been doing this for 40 years, that her body simply was not like other bodies. She said the line that people like her always say, the one that should be bolted to a post at the bottom of every trail that kills the overconfident. She told him the warning was not really meant for someone like her. That was the first off-ramp she passed, and she passed it smiling. She walked by the kiosk without slowing, the one with the laminated card pinned behind cracked plastic that lists the preserve's heat deaths in a font too small to frighten anybody. No mention on that card of how strong any of them had been, no mention of their training, their resumes, their finishing times. The desert does not keep those statistics. It keeps exactly one. And she was already walking toward the line where her own entry would be written. The first half mile felt to her like proof. The sand near the base was firm enough, the grade forgiving, her legs strong and certain beneath her, in a way that confirmed everything she had told the ranger. This is the part I have to slow down for, because this is where the desert began its real work, quietly, in a place she could not feel it. In dry heat, the sweat leaves your skin the instant it forms. You never see it. You never feel wet. You feel, if anything, oddly dry and comfortable, even as your body pours out water it cannot afford to lose. Her shirt was barely damp, and she read that as a sign she was handling it. It was the opposite. It was the desert taking what it was owed without leaving a receipt. There were 2 more things working against her that she could not feel either, and you have to carry them up the slope with her, because they come due at the top. The first is that thirst in a place like this is a liar. It arrives long after the debt is already owed, which means by the time she felt like drinking, she was already behind, and a person who only drinks when thirsty in the desert is always losing. The second is the cruelest. A body cools itself by sweating, but sweating only works as long as the body has water to spend on it. Let it fall far enough behind and the sweating simply stops. The skin goes dry and hot, and that is not the cooling system slowing down. It is the cooling system failing. Remember the dry shirt she was proud of. Her body was already spending toward that line, and she had read the warning as a compliment. A few hundred yards higher, she met a young couple coming down, sunburned and quiet, and clearly rattled. The way people get when a place has shown them something about themselves, they did not enjoy learning. They stopped her. They told her it was far worse up top than it looked from the bottom, that they had turned around before the high crest because the heat coming off the sand had frightened them. One of them held out a spare bottle because that is what decent people do for a stranger walking the wrong way into something dangerous. She waved it off with a smile and told them she was fine, that she carried her own, that she did this all the time. They were the second off-ramp, and she passed them too. She had no way to know that those two frightened kids walking down were the last people who would ever offer her a way out. The climb steepened. The firm sand gave way to the deep, soft, sliding kind that swallows half of every step you take, that makes a strong runner spend twice the effort for half the ground. Her breathing changed. Her legs, those reliable, decorated legs, began to argue with her in a language she had spent 40 years learning to ignore. And this is the part that should have saved her and instead destroyed her, because here her training turned traitor. Every instinct a distance runner builds over a lifetime tells you the burn is a liar, that the voice begging you to stop is weakness, that the only way through is to override the body and keep going. On a marathon course, that instinct is a gift. On that slope, it was a loaded gun pointed inward. The early warnings of heat illness, the heavy legs, the swimming head, the strange flat fatigue feel almost exactly like the late miles of a hard race. So she did to them what she had trained for 4 decades to do. She pushed through. She told the warnings they were not meant for someone like her, and she said it now to her own body. Somewhere on that slope, her water bottle went half empty, and that was the moment Wes had warned her about. The line drawn in the sand the desert does not let you uncross. Half gone means turn around. She was nowhere near the top. A careful person, a person who had listened, would have looked at that bottle and started down right then with enough margin to make it. She looked at the high crest instead, close now, almost in reach, and made the decision that turns nearly every one of these stories from a hard day into a fatal one. She decided she had come too far to quit. She tipped the rest of the bottle back, told herself she would refill at the car, and kept climbing. That was the hinge. Everything before it was recoverable. Everything after it was arithmetic. I want to name the help that was sitting within reach the entire time, because it makes what happened next harder to bear. Back down the road, not far in a vehicle, sat a visitor station where a radio could have brought a patrol her way in minutes. The young couple on the slope had a phone, a spare bottle, and the willingness to walk her down. The ranger at the bottom would have moved heaven and earth to keep her off that crest. Every one of those was a door standing open behind her, and the higher she climbed, the further each one slid out of reach, until somewhere near the top the last of them quietly closed, and she had no idea it had happened. The desert is patient that way. It does not slam the door. It lets you walk past it, and it waits. She reached the high crest, and for a little while, she had what she came for. The whole Mojave opened out beneath her, the long bare ranges and the white floor of the basins and the road thin as a thread far below. She had done it. She stood up there in her race shirt with her empty bottle and felt one last time like the exception she had always told everyone she was. Then she turned to go down, and the desert began, very calmly, to collect what she had spent climbing up. The descent should have been the easy half. It was not, because by now every gun she had loaded on the way up was ready to fire. The dry shirt she had been proud of was the visible edge of a debt 2 hours in the making. The thirst that had stayed politely quiet arrived all at once, enormous, and there was nothing in the bottle to answer it. Her legs, asked to break down a slope of sliding sand, would not cooperate. And then the symptom that frightens rangers more than any other arrived without announcing itself. The sweating stopped. Her skin, which should have been soaked, went dry and hot to the touch, and that meant the cooling system failing quietly for the last mile had finally given out. Her core temperature, with nothing left to hold it down, began to climb. A body that overheats does not start by attacking the legs or the lungs. It starts cruelly with the one organ she needed most up there, the one that makes decisions. The first thing serious heat takes from a person is judgment. The part of the mind that should have been screaming at her to sit in what little shade a dune crest offers, to ration what she had, to call out, to wait, That part was the first thing the heat switched off. And so, instead of staying on the line of the climb where she could be seen, she did the thing that turns a rescue into a recovery. Confused, overheated, certain in the broken way, the heat makes you certain, she walked off the path, struck out across an open face of the dunes, toward what some scrambled part of her brain had decided was a shorter way down, and dropped over a ridge into a bowl of sand where no one on the normal trail would ever see her. That was the point of no return, and the terrible thing is that she almost certainly did not experience it as a decision at all. She would have felt clear-headed. The heat lies to you that way at the end. It takes your judgment and then convinces you your judgment has never been sharper. She believed she was finding a clever line down. She was, in fact, walking away from every person who might have found her, into a fold of the dunes where the heat pooled and the wind erased her tracks. And resting there did not recharge her, the way rest always had after a hard run. You cannot rest your way back from this. Sitting still in that radiant heat is just a slower way of cooking, and her body had nothing left to spend on cooling whether she moved or not. Her car sat alone in the gravel lot as the afternoon burned down and the light went long and gold across the sand. A ranger, making an evening pass, noticed it, the only vehicle left, and felt the particular weight of a car that has stayed too long. By the time a search could be mounted in earnest, the light was gone, and the dunes at night are an almost impossible thing to comb, all those identical folds swallowing a flashlight beam. They found her the next morning off the established route, down in a low bowl of sand a surprisingly short distance from the trail she had left, in the kind of place you only end up if something has gone very wrong with the part of you that chooses where to walk. The ruling was what these rulings almost always are: heat. The body ran out of the water it needed to keep itself cool, the core temperature climbed past what a person can survive, and everything downstream of that failed in order. There was no cliff, no predator, no freak event. There was only a hot afternoon, a single small bottle, a climb she would not turn back from, and 40 years of training that had taught her to ignore the exact alarms that might have saved her. It stuns me every time I sit with one of these, how preventable it all was and how loudly the desert tried to say so. The advisory was posted. The ranger spoke to her at the bottom. A frightened couple offered her a bottle and a way down. Her own water gave her the clean, simple signal to turn around, and she had been told in plain words exactly what that signal meant. Everything she needed to survive was handed to her before she ever started climbing. The only thing she carried up that she should have left at the car was the certainty that none of it applied to her. If you take one thing from this, take this. The desert does not care how fit you are. It is not impressed by your finishing times, your decades, your discipline. It is not testing your strength, because strength was never the thing that survives out there. The people who come home are the ones humble enough to turn around with half a bottle left. The ones who do not are very often the strongest people on the mountain, undone by the single belief that being strong was going to be enough. If this story unsettled you, or made you think of someone who needs to hear it before their next big hike, do me a favor and subscribe, and leave a comment about the warning you almost ignored and the person who made you listen. Those comments save lives, and I read every one. Because in the end, the desert keeps only one statistic, and the saddest entries in it are always the people who were sure the warning was written for somebody else. This has been Doomed Departures. Stay safe, and we will see you on the next one.